Have you ever paid for a pharmacy consultation and walked out thinking, wait, that was $180 for 10 minutes? Be honest, has that ever happened to you? You bring in a bag of medications, blood pressure pills, something for sleep, maybe a vitamin your neighbor swears by. You sit down, you ask your questions, and you leave with a few reassurances. And the receipt that makes you pause in the parking lot. Now here's the uncomfortable question. How many times a year does that happen? Twice? 3 times? Maybe more if something changes? That adds up fast. And after 50, things do change. New prescriptions, adjustments, side effects you didn't expect, interactions you didn't even know to ask about. That's exactly where I found myself a few months ago. My friend Daniel, he is 62, called me one evening. He had just picked up a new prescription. Nothing dramatic, just something his doctor added to help with cholesterol. But now he was worried. Not panicked, just that quiet, nagging worry. Can I take this with my other meds? That was the question. So he did what most people do. He booked a consultation, paid the fee, sat through it, got his answer. And then, a week later, he had another question. Different medication, same process, same cost. That's when he said something that stuck with me. He said, I feel like I am paying for peace of mind, not information. And that's when I started wondering, what if there was a cheaper way to get that same peace of mind for everyday questions? Not replacing your doctor, not ignoring professional advice, but handling the routine stuff, the small questions, the constant checking. So I decided to try something. For 30 days, I used a free AI medication checker setup instead of booking consultations for every little question. Same concerns, same medications, just a completely different tool. No special training, no medical background, just curiosity and a desire to stop watching $180 disappear every time I had a simple question. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to diagnose anything, and I'm definitely not telling you to ignore professional advice. But what I can do is show you exactly what happened when I let AI handle the routine checks, the same ones that were quietly draining my wallet. Because what most people assume about tools like this and what actually happens when you use them daily are two very different things. Before I walk you through exactly what I did, you need to understand why the old way costs so much. Most people assume that $180 pharmacy consultation is just someone answering a few questions. But that's not really what you're paying for. You're paying for years of training, licensing, liability, the safety of knowing a real human professional is responsible for what they tell you. You're also paying for their time that's limited, scheduled, and often rushed. And to be fair, that matters, especially for complex cases, especially when something feels off. But here's the part nobody says out loud. A lot of what happens in those appointments is actually structured, repeatable, almost checklist-based work. They look at your medications, they check for known interactions, they review standard dosage guidelines, they flag anything unusual, and then they translate that into plain English so you can understand it. It's valuable, no question, but it's also predictable. And that's exactly the kind of work AI has quietly gotten very good at. So I started asking a simple question. Not can AI replace a pharmacist, because that's the wrong question. The better question is, can AI handle the routine check so I don't have to pay $180 every time I feel unsure? That's the experiment. Now let me show you exactly what I used, because this part is important. I didn't use anything fancy, no paid subscriptions, no complicated software. I used a combination of two free tools. First, a standard AI chatbot, something like ChatGPT or Google Gemini, to ask questions in plain English. Second, I cross-checked everything with a free public medication database like drugs.com interaction checker. That's it. No secret system, no hidden costs. Just those two layers, one for explanation, one for verification. And before I started, I set very clear rules for myself. Because without rules, this kind of experiment can get sloppy, and that's not what you want when medications are involved. Rule number 1. I only used AI for non-emergency, routine questions. Things like, can I take this medication with that one? Or, is this a common side effect? Or, should I take this with food? If anything felt serious, chest pain, severe reactions, anything urgent, I skipped the AI and contacted a real professional immediately. No hesitation. Rule number 2. I never took the AI's first answer at face value. Every single time I cross-checked it, either with the interaction checker or by asking the AI to double-check itself in a different way. For example, instead of asking, is this safe? I'd follow up with, what are the known interactions between these two drugs and how serious are they? Same question, different angle. It forces a more detailed answer. Rule number 3. I kept a simple log. Nothing fancy. Just a notebook where I wrote down the question, what the AI said, and what the verification tool showed. Because I wanted to see patterns, not just one-off answers. Rule number 4. I did not change any prescriptions based on AI suggestions. This is important. I didn't adjust dosages, I didn't stop medications, I didn't start anything new without talking to a licensed professional. The AI was there for awareness, for understanding, for catching potential issues early so I could ask better questions when I did speak to a doctor or pharmacist. And finally, rule number 5. The trial would last 30 days, long enough to see real-life situations come up, short enough to stay focused. Success wasn't defined as never needing a pharmacist again. That's unrealistic. Success was simpler than that. Did I feel more informed? Did I catch potential issues before they became problems? And most importantly, did I avoid unnecessary $180 consultations for routine questions? Because if the answer to those was yes, even part of the time, that's real savings, real control, real peace of mind. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, this sounds good in theory, but what actually happens when you rely on it day after day? Do the answers make sense? Does it get things wrong? Do you end up more confused than when you started? That's exactly what I wanted to find out. And what surprised me wasn't just what worked. It was how quickly small habits started to change the way I handled my own health questions. Let me walk you through what those 30 days actually looked like. The first few days felt awkward. I'll be honest with you. I was sitting there typing out medication names into a chatbot, half expecting it to give me something vague or overly technical, something I couldn't really use. So I started simple. Can I take atorvastatin with a daily magnesium supplement? That was the exact question. Within seconds, the AI gave me a clear answer. It explained that there's no major interaction, but timing can matter. Magnesium might slightly affect absorption if taken at the same time. It suggested spacing them out by a couple of hours. Not bad. But this is where the habit kicked in. I didn't just accept it. I went straight to the drugs.com interaction checker and entered the same combination. Result? No major interaction. A note about absorption timing. That was my first, okay, this might actually work moment. By day 5, I started getting more comfortable. And that's when the real life situation started showing up. One evening, I had a mild headache. Normally, I'd just grab whatever pain reliever was in the cabinet. But this time I paused. I typed, is it safe to take ibuprofen with blood pressure medication like lisinopril? The AI didn't just say yes or no. It explained that NSAIDs like ibuprofen can sometimes reduce the effectiveness of blood pressure meds and, in some cases, affect kidney function, especially with long-term use. That wasn't something I would have thought about in the moment. Again, I cross-checked. Same warning. Not a hard stop, but definitely something to be aware of. So instead of just taking it automatically, I made a more informed choice. Lower dose, short-term use, and I made a note to bring it up at my next doctor visit. That's when I realized something important. It wasn't just about replacing consultations. It was about catching these small decision points that usually happen too fast. Now, not everything was smooth. Around day 10, I made a mistake. I asked a very broad question. Are my medications safe together? And I listed 5 different prescriptions. The answer came back. Long, dense, a bit overwhelming. It mentioned possible interactions, but without clear prioritization. Nothing was technically wrong, but it wasn't immediately helpful either. That's when I learned a key lesson. AI works better when you break things down. So I changed my approach. Instead of asking one big question, I asked multiple smaller ones. Medication A with medication B. Medication A with medication C. Any known interaction between medication B and supplements like vitamin D? Suddenly the answers became clearer, more focused, easier to verify. That one adjustment made a huge difference. Another surprise came around sleep. A friend of mine, Linda, she's 67, mentioned she was taking an over-the-counter sleep aid along with her regular medications. She wasn't sure if it was causing her grogginess in the morning. So we tested it. We entered her medications and asked the AI to explain common side effects and possible interactions with that specific sleep aid. The response pointed out something subtle. Certain sleep aids can amplify drowsiness when combined with other medications that already have mild sedative effects. Again, not dangerous in every case, but enough to explain how she was feeling. We verified it. Same information. And for the first time, she understood why mornings felt so heavy. No diagnosis, no changes made on the spot, just awareness. That's a pattern you'll notice here. The biggest benefit wasn't dramatic. It wasn't life-changing overnight. It was quiet clarity. Now, there were annoyances too. Sometimes the AI would be overly cautious. It would list every possible side effect, even the rare ones, which could feel a little overwhelming if you weren't careful. Other times, it would use language that sounded confident, but you still had to remind yourself to verify. That habit never went away, and honestly, it shouldn't. By day 20, the process became routine. Question, answer, cross-check. Took maybe 3 to 5 minutes. Compare that to scheduling an appointment, driving there, waiting, asking your question, and paying $180. It's not even close in terms of time. But here's the part I didn't expect. I started asking better questions. Instead of reacting after something felt off, I was checking things beforehand. New prescription? Check interactions that same day. Adding a supplement? Quick lookup before the first dose. Even simple things like, should I take this with food? Became second nature to verify. That shift from reactive to proactive was probably the biggest change of the entire 30 days. And yet, there was always that question in the back of my mind. Is this actually enough? Is this just convenient? Or is it genuinely useful for someone over 50 dealing with multiple medications? Because convenience alone isn't enough when your health is involved. So at the end of the 30 days, I looked at everything. The notes, the questions, the situations where it helped, and the ones where it didn't. And the results were a lot more balanced and a lot more interesting than I expected. At the end of the 30 days, I sat down with that simple notebook. Every question, every answer, every cross-check. And I asked myself one thing. Did this actually replace those $180 consultations? The honest answer is not completely. And that's important to say right up front. Because if you're expecting a free AI tool to fully replace a licensed pharmacist, especially after 50 when medications can get more complex, that's not realistic. But here's what it did do. Out of all the situations that came up during those 30 days, I avoided 3 consultations that I would have normally booked. 3. That's roughly $540 saved, just by handling routine questions differently. Not by guessing, not by taking risks, but by being more informed before deciding whether I even needed to call someone. That's a big shift. Now let's talk about who this is actually for. If you're someone over 50 managing multiple medications, and you find yourself asking small questions over and over, timing, interactions, side effects, supplements, this can be incredibly useful, especially if you're organized, especially if you're willing to double check and not rush. It works well for people who want to understand what's going on, not just be told what to do. But it's not for everyone. If you don't feel comfortable verifying information, or if you tend to take the first answer you hear and run with it, this can actually create more risk than benefit. And if your situation is complex, multiple conditions, frequent medication changes, anything unusual, you still need regular input from a licensed professional. There is no shortcut around that. Now, let's talk about limitations, because this is where people get into trouble if they are not careful. AI tools can explain known interactions. They can summarize common side effects. They can help you ask better questions, but they do not know you. They don't see your full medical history. They don't run lab tests. They don't catch nuances the way a trained professional can during a real conversation. And sometimes they can sound more confident than they should. That's why the cross-check step is non-negotiable. That second layer, whether it's a tool like drugs.com interaction checker or another trusted source, that's what turns this from a risky shortcut into a safer habit. And even then, there are clear lines you don't cross. You don't change dosages on your own. You don't stop medication suddenly based on something you read. You don't ignore serious symptoms because an AI gave you a reassuring answer. Those are the moments where you pick up the phone, talk to your doctor, or go in person. No hesitation. Now I want to be very clear about something. What I've shared here is my personal experience. It's not medical advice. It's not legal advice. It's not individualized financial advice. It's simply what happened when I tested a specific approach for 30 days. Your situation could be completely different. Your medications, your health history, your needs, they all matter. So always use licensed professionals for medical decisions, medication changes, or anything that could affect your health in a serious way. That said, there's a middle ground here that a lot of people are starting to discover. You don't have to choose between doing nothing and paying $180 every time a small question comes up. You can use tools to stay informed in between those important appointments. And that alone can change how you manage your health after 50. So, if you want to try this yourself, keep it simple. Pick one question you already have. Something small, something routine. Run it through an AI chatbot like ChatGPT or Google Gemini. Then verify it with a trusted interaction checker. See how long it takes. See how it feels. Don't rush into anything bigger. Because the real benefit here isn't speed, it's confidence. Not blind confidence, not risky confidence. Informed confidence. The kind that helps you pause for a moment before taking something new or combining something you hadn't thought twice about before. And after 50, that pause can matter more than we realize. Not because everything is dangerous, but because the small decisions, the quiet ones, they add up over time.